All right, good morning, everyone, or evening, depending on where you might be calling in from. My name is Matt Cornwell. I'm the Associate Director of Student Services for RIT Saunders College of Business. And I'm very excited today to have three exceptional alumni of our graduate programs to discuss their experiences and their career paths throughout their programs and the opportunities that were provided to them as a result of their RIT education. So before we do introductions, just a couple housekeeping items. If you do need captioning, again, Zoom does have that feature, so please feel free to turn those on, that captioning feature on. And then any questions, we welcome that. We're going to have kind of a scripted set of questions that we'll go through, but we want to hear from you. So if you have questions that you would like addressed, please use that Q&A feature. This is a Zoom webinar, it's not a meeting. So feel free to use that Q&A feature. We'll work through those questions as we progress through the session, but absolutely welcome those questions as we continue forward. Without further ado, Ruben, I'll start with you if you don't mind just doing a brief introduction and we'll kind of work our way around.
Hi, I'm Ruben Zelensky. I'm a dual graduate of RIT. I graduated in '85 with a bachelor's in electrical engineering. Went to work for big companies, started my career with IBM, then went into medical device and pharmaceuticals. Did that for about 30 years. During that time, I got a graduate degree from Rensselaer when I was at IBM in mechanical engineering. And then when I was in sales with IBM, I got an EMBA. I was class number 2. And currently, right now, I run a small startup. Actually, it's not a startup company. It was a startup company. Now we're in the middle of pretty good growth. It's a vacuum system for smartphones and hearing aids and any kind of electronics that we can 100% guarantee we get the water out of.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ruben. Thanks again for being here. Jeff, I'll go to you next.
Sure. Thank you, Ruben. Jeff Fasselt. I'm a 2001 graduate of the MBA program. My undergrad degree was from SUNY Geneseo. I'm an accountant by trade. So I had a Bachelor of Science in accounting, and I spent 7 years as a CPA in public practice before I entered the corporate world. And it was at that point that I realized I really needed to add to my education in order to be successful in my new role. And that's when I enrolled at RIT. So I'm currently the Senior Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and Treasurer for Preferred Mutual Insurance, a mid-sized insurance carrier headquartered in upstate New York.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. And thanks again for being here. And Karuna.
Thank you so much, and thanks, Jeff and Ruben. Karuna Mukherjee. I'm a graduate of 1997. I got my master's in finance from RIT. Did my undergrad at another master's in India. Have always been in tech. Moved out of Rochester pretty soon after I graduated. I did a year of co-op at Xerox and then moved into tech and have been at large companies like Oracle, SAP, have a stint for 3 years at a startup as well. And currently I am at Salesforce, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer for one of their acquired companies, MuleSoft, and based here in the Bay Area.
Thank you, Karuna. Appreciate it. And thanks again for being here. All right, so let's jump in. The first kind of bucket of questions will focus on career co-op experiences. Ruben, I'll start with you. How did your RIT education aid with your career track?
To start, it was a great technical foundation, and it was just awesome. RIT stood apart, the graduates stood apart from a lot of people I worked with. And I don't know if that was individual or my education. I'd have to say it was probably 80% education where I went and 20%. It was always a little lore when you had RIT. We used to talk about it. RIT grads get jobs. So when I was in IBM, it was during IBM taking a fall. I went into sales, and here's a technical guy trying to sell stuff. And the hardest thing I ever had to do was pick up the phone and call a customer because I didn't know what to say. And, so I wanted to understand the financials, the strategy of the accounting, all that, business side of it. So what I did was I applied to RIT EMBA, got in, and that led to, getting recruited outside of IBM. And it was interesting. I got recruited in the med device and pharmaceutical industry. I was like, well, I don't know anything about that. And I asked my future boss, why are you recruiting me? And he said, Ruben, he goes, I want a guy that can sell technically, sell to the organization. And we're trying to align the organization and focus on a transformation. And you're the type of guy that could help do it. So that RIT education and experience really, really helped it.
Thank you, Ruben. Really appreciate those insights. Jeff or Kern, anything else you want to add to that question?
Karuna, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I think I do want to kind of tag on what Ruben says, right? I think RIT being a technical school, even though my degree was not in technology, in a very subtle way, you get exposed to technology. And so, in my master's program, I took a couple of courses in information systems, more out of curiosity, but that would lead to, for me, spending the next 25 years in tech, and I've not been in technical roles, I think says something about the school for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Karuna. And then the next question. Now, I'll start with this. Did any of you do a co-op while you were in the graduate program?
Yeah.
So can you just kind of, again, in the same vein, how that experience prepared you for where you are now? As many of our students, a co-op is not required at the graduate level, but many take advantage of it. And that's obviously the kind of 1A selling point of RIT. But yeah, Karuna, if you want to start with that, how that experience prepared you for where you are today.
Absolutely. So, I was an international student, right? And so by default, when you come here as an international student, your first year, you don't have work experience in this country. And so the co-op program was a great way to kind of get exposed, for companies to actually see you, because they were coming to RIT, they were coming to our graduate program. And I think the experience was phenomenal in many ways, right? It was a great learning experience. It is when you officially graduated, you graduated with WorkX from an American company. And, I have, and as like a lot of RIT graduates, I, had the privilege of doing my 1 year of co-op at Xerox. That really set you up for a career going forward, right? And yes, because of the visa issues, you have to, I was not able to secure employment in the Rochester area, but I moved out. But I think that balance of learning, of working, of kind of building a network so quickly, after a while still in school and after school, really helps you propel your career, right? I mean, in fact, funny enough, I'm still friends with my manager at Xerox that hired me in 1997, 98, right? I'm still in touch with him. And so to me, there is a little bit of that power of network and learning that's phenomenal.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. That's great. Thank you, Karuna. Jeff, anything else you want to add to that?
I did not engage in a co-op. Obviously, I was working full time when I entered the MBA program, so that wasn't really an option for my program.
Okay, and Ruben, anything else there from the co-op perspective?
Well, I didn't do a co-op when I was in grad study. Obviously, I was working full time like Jeff was, but when I was an undergrad. Simply put, I think the co-op program indicated to me, and my biggest takeaway was what I didn't want to do in my career.
Yeah.
So I had, I co-opted at GE and I co-opted at IBM, mostly at IBM, and I had different assignments there. And I just, like GE was working on, I don't know if people on the phone may not remember this, but maybe Karuna and Jeff, the MX missile program, right? And, that was working on some part of the guidance system. And I just didn't enjoy working on something that I thought would drop a bomb 50 feet closer to somebody, things like that, So I just, it was just an awesome experience that told me what I didn't want to do.
Yeah, 100%. We talk about that a lot, right? You have that learning opportunity to do it in a setting, in an educational setting, and that's just as important. You want to know it before you get out there and in the real world and doing a full-time job. So that's a big takeaway. Thanks, Ruben. So Jeff, I'll start with you on this one. What were there favorite classes that you had, business classes at RIT and Saunders, and again, how that kind of supported your into the job market?
Yeah, my favorite classes in the program were those that kind of expanded my overall business acumen. So courses related to strategy, to operations, and to marketing. You know, those were all courses that helped to expand kind of my base of knowledge in how do you run an organization? You know, how should a business operate? What are the key levers that you need to adjust and pull in order to be successful as a company? So, you know, gaining that knowledge was a big step forward in my overall business acumen, and really helped me to really leap forward in my career.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Great insights. Ruben or Kern, anything else you want to add there regarding any of the classes that stood out to you while you were here at RIT and Saunders?
You know, I was a finance major, and so I took a lot of finance and accounting classes. But I think, and I don't know if those classes are still offered, but these, you know, these intro to like a parallel or aligned field. So like in my case, I took information systems. Like those classes, you know, they're really helpful, right? They kind of get to see, almost put yourself in a position of, you know, where is my degree going to be used, right? So I think that's something I do remember quite vividly.
Yeah, for me, it was accounting, finance, and strategy, as Jeff indicated. I found it fascinating analyzing Harvard business cases, understanding things about core competency and identifying those core competencies, really in companies and myself, quite frankly. And, you know, doing things like SWOT analysis and how to analyze business ideas. I knew at some point in time I would go into working for myself. I was a pretty innovative guy, and I wanted those takeaways and how to do this, and analyzing business and you know how to get people to buy into what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. And again, all those courses are certainly still available. The info systems classes in particular are very attractive. Our accounting program is now an accounting and analytics program, combining those areas as well. So I'm very intentional with that. But again, it's the technical edge that RIT has, and we have to capitalize on that. So it's something that we do pretty well. All right, so moving on kind of to your RIT experience on the whole. Ruben, I'll start with you. What was the most challenging part of jumping into grad school for you?
Well, it was balancing my job, my family, and a commitment to the program to complete the degree, quite frankly. And,
Yeah.
you know, I jumped in feet first. And, you know, there was a couple times, probably like everyone, you kind of doubt what you've jumped into. But, you know, you find the fortitude and you look in the mirror and you say, you know, I'm going to get this done. And but it was that combination, because I'm a happily married guy and I got great kids, and I just didn't want to ruin that, to be honest with you. So I found a way to balance that.
Yeah, that's big. Jeff, anything you want to add there?
Same experience, you know. So when I started the program, I had a 2-year-old, and my wife was pregnant with her second child, and I had a full-time role. I was the controller for a subsidiary of Ziff Davis, and you know, in a very demanding, you know, accounting finance role, depending on the quarter, you know, the time in the quarter or the month. So just balancing that with the program. But that's one of the reasons that I chose RIT, because of the flexibility of the program compared to other schools that I had looked at. And that was very appealing to me. And you kind of set your own pace. You know, I mean, it took me 4 years to complete the program. Essentially, it was a quarter system back then, so essentially took 1 class per quarter to complete the program in the 4-year period. And anything more than that would have been, you know, a significant challenge in balancing everything else.
Yeah, great advice for those. And we have a good segment of students that are in the same boat. You're working full time, doing powering through. So I think it's fantastic advice there.
It's manageable.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think Jeff had a good segue there to why you all chose RIT. Kurna, what was one of the big reasons why you ended up, you know, choosing RIT for graduate study?
Yeah, so I, you know, I was very specifically applying for an MS program in finance. So, that was the criteria. The other one was really looking at programs that would get me, the ability to get an internship or a co-op. So that was the second criteria. I will say the third criteria also was I was looking for schools to come in the East Coast, because my sister went to school in Maryland. And so, so there were like these top three. And the last one was really, where I was able to secure a merit scholarship. So, based on that, I applied, I got into the program. I had, some friends, my sister's friends who were aware of the program. And it, as I said, it seemed solid. I never got a chance to visit school before I actually showed up when classes started. So that's how I ended up at RIT, because it met that criteria.
Excellent.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Karuna. Just a couple highlights there, just in addition to that. For our international students, all of our on-campus in-person programs are now STEM designated. So those programs do allow you to extend your OPT by 2 years. So you can stay in the US for up to 3 years total on your optional practical training. And then the merit scholarships, we certainly still offer those as well. So the range is typically 20 to 50% of tuition. So be mindful of those pieces as well. The next question, I think, similarly along the same lines, and it may be similar responses, but what was the most difficult challenge you had to overcome, if any, in your program? And I'll just open that up to anybody.
Well, for me, it was, in the EMBA program, I don't know what it is like now, what the structure is, but it was every other weekend, all day Friday and all day Saturday. And, so it wasn't that far of a drive from where I lived, but it was far enough that I ended up staying in a hotel every other Friday night. And, that created some stress, at home. My wife, very understanding of my academic endeavors, but, I think she was like, what the heck do you need to do this for? So it was a challenge, being away.
Yeah.
I made it work though.
Yeah. I would say the group projects, were something that stood out as very challenging at times. But it was excellent preparation for kind of the real world and how things work in business. You're gonna have times where you're on teams where it's a high performing team. Everyone is doing what they're supposed to do. They're all contributing. And then other times you're going to be on teams where you've got people who aren't pulling their weight, aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, actively causing issues, and you have to learn how to manage that. And I think the RIT experience in the MBA program really prepared me well for that.
Yeah, I think I will say for me, the first few months, I think it was just the first winter was a bit challenging for me. I will say I came. I am putting it very bluntly. But once I kind of learned the ways around that. I think the other thing, is really this, coming as an international student for the first time, you're studying in a very different type of an education environment. And an education environment, especially at RIT, this, a lot of group projects, a lot of discussion-based learning, a lot of discussion-based projects, interacting, with so many different kinds of people, from different parts of the world. I wouldn't necessarily call that challenging, but it's a very humbling experience, right? Because like you said, there are people just smarter than you. There are people that coming with like I never had any, corporate work experience when I came into the program, but, it was an MS program in the business school. So there are a lot of common classes with people pursuing their MBA. In fact, my husband was one of them. So you kind of, you're suddenly, it's like I said, it's humbling because people have such rich experiences. They are really smart. They are dedicated. So I think that was the thing. But I think the biggest challenge I would say was the winter.
I'll come in a little bit on what Jeff, I'll kind of parrot what he said on the teams. I was on, you're on a couple teams, right? Because you're, for the year, you got a whole team, 4 people. That was the team I was on. The first team I was on, 3 of us had children and 1 person didn't have any children. So that created a huge conflict, at holidays and, your kids have things going on at school. And, we had a couple, down and out, discussions, I wouldn't say arguments, but I mean, we worked it out, and Jeff's right. You learn to work it out, and you figure it out. And you know, because the person that didn't have any children was actually a pretty smart person, and we needed that person. So we figured out a way to work it out.
Yeah, it's huge. I think, RIT is known for its co-op program, right? But the experiential education you get in the classroom is extremely valuable as well. So those
Yes,
opportunities to work in the group settings and those and we have some simulations that are incorporated in this course
absolutely.
as well. So those are big aspects, right?
Yeah, and I just to add on to that, what you just said, Matt, you know, that was also my first exposure to working with international students. In fact, probably working with anyone international in my career at that point. Um, as someone, born and raised in upstate New York and then went to, a small liberal arts college here for undergrad, it was, there was definitely a lack of diversity in my background and my exposure to diversity to that point. And my experience at RIT really kind of opened up my world, right? So it allowed me to engage with people who had come from multiple different countries, different backgrounds, and that alone, helped to I think really broaden my world viewpoint and understand better kind of how different cultures work and interact, and certainly prepared me for when I did start working for organizations that were international and did start working with teams around the world. It really helped to prepare me for that.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, it's massive, right? And our population is just growing in diversity. We're close to 50% international students in our graduate programs now. We have about
Wow.
130 in our graduate business programs. And that growth is tremendous and it adds tons of value to the classroom.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so for our attendees, at this point, we definitely would welcome questions. I'm gonna pose one more for the group and then we'll jump into any questions that you all have. But for the last one, just kind of generally, what would be one piece of advice or a couple nuggets that you would like to give the attendees as they start kind of either beginning grad school, maybe in the spring, or looking at options? What are some pieces of advice you would have for them?
I'll start. I interviewed actually at Syracuse and the U of R and RIT for a graduate business degree. And I remember distinctly going to the U of R and, at the end of the interview, I can't remember who the interviewer was, but he said, yeah, once you get out of here, you'll have a great job, down on Wall Street and as a stock trader. And I walked out of there saying, I don't want to be a stock trader, a stockbroker. I want a general business degree to understand how to run a business. And so I guess my word of wisdom there is try to understand what you want out of the program before you get into the program, right? What are you really after before you jump in?
Yeah, it's incredible advice. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I likewise, I also looked at Simon as one of the schools as an alternative to RIT, and it has very similar experience to Ruben. I was looking for a program that would provide me with practical experience that I could apply in my current role and that would enable me to advance my career. And RIT delivered on that 100%. I also was looking for a program that was very tech oriented. I was working for a tech company. I went on to spend the next 20 years of my career in tech before I moved into financial services. And, RIT's focus around technology and integrating technology into the program, the number of alumni, who were at different, well-known technology companies, all of that was a big influence on my decision to attend RIT. And it certainly paid off in terms of my ability to hit the ground running coming out of the program and contribute and be a valuable contributor in my own organization.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. And Kern, anything else that you would add?
No, I do want to stress the importance of finding the program that meets your ambitions, your career ambitions, because every MBA program, every graduate program is different. They come with a different brand, they come with a different skill set. So I think that is one piece of advice. Like in my case, I was very specific about choosing an MS program because I did not want to do an MBA. I just felt like the timing at that point was not right for me. And I was truly interested in going down a path of working in finance and more pure finance. That changed, just with the exposure. But I think that piece is really critical because you can end up in a program, spending time and money, and then when you finish, it's just not what you want to do. So I have all, I know a lot of RIT graduates, and I think the one thing we all agree on is we got the degree we wanted and we ended up where we wanted to be. And I think that's an important piece.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think doing the research is huge, and just getting a feel for it, and getting a feel for the program, and like Dale said, those outcomes. What are those outcomes?
Yeah.
And opportunities to connect with alumni, like we're doing today. Like those things are important and valuable, and we can provide those for you. So I think all of that coming together is an important outcome. So we have a great question here from Sarah. Could you talk about a professional challenge you experienced as a barrier to career progression and how you overcame that challenge?
Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Jeff. I'm thinking
Yeah.
which one I could choose.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many.
That's an excellent question. So I think in order to advance in your career to the senior executive ranks, it's more than just based on your own personal abilities. A lot of it becomes about your abilities to lead and manage people, to build collaborative relationships, and ultimately to influence the organization in a positive way. And those are all skills that you develop over time. But it was my degree at RIT that enabled me to have the confidence to pursue pursue some of those positions and to really advance my career to where it is today. It gave me the background and the knowledge and the acumen, and ultimately the confidence to pursue those things. But it really becomes about leading people versus your own individual contributions at a certain point. So that's one piece of advice I might add.
Yeah, I think the other piece that I would add is, and you're so right, like as you progress in your career, as you go up, kind of the aspirations to go into the executive ranks, it is, it's a very holistic mindset that you need to take with you, right? You need to lead and inspire teams. You need to have a high EQ, but you need to have a high perception of, what is, and in our space, and, I'm in technology. At the end of the day, we build technology to solve a customer's problems, right? So our technology is not built for the labs. It is built for it to be used on a daily basis for companies to run their business. So truly keeping up with what is happening from an innovation standpoint, and I just don't mean technology innovation, but innovation from how are companies evolving to run their businesses differently? How are they expanding their businesses? How are they landing in new areas of the business? So like keeping your curiosity alive is something that you have to build as a muscle. And some people have it naturally, some people don't have it, but that's something like regardless of the field, like that is something that one really needs to be hyper focused on as you look to grow in your career. The other thing I will say is as part of this journey, as you step into the workforce, is also this ability that you need to become known for something, right? So becoming a specialist in a field. for me, I got a degree in finance. I have worked in tech, but I had tremendous confidence that I understand. And I always worked, when I started my career in tech, I was working in parts of Oracle that were focused on providing financial software, accounting software, right? So that was a space I understood from a business function standpoint. I knew problems an accountant was trying to solve. I understood what a ledger looked like. And that gave me an edge, sitting in a product management org as we designed product, as we designed dashboards, right? There was a huge pivotal shift happening in the late 90s of things getting digitized in finance and accounting. So, so kind of lean in on what you've learned. You just never know, where it will come in use, and stay curious.
Yeah, I love that. Stay curious. That's great. Great advice. Ruben, anything else that you want to add?
Well, one of the biggest challenges I had was I had a job offer or opportunity to leave IBM a couple of years after my MBA. So I had 13 years in the company, and it was going into medical devices. It was Bristol Myers Squibb. And I tell you, I laid awake two weeks thinking about that. I'm kind of halfway towards retirement, right? I'm going in a complete different industry. I know nothing about medical devices. I'm an electronics instrumentation guy. And really at the end of the day, it were the tools in my toolbox that I learned from RIT, that I got from RIT, the experiences that allowed me to succeed. And, I was in medical devices and pharmaceuticals for over 20 years after that. It was just, I was filled with anxiety, but it was an easy transition, honestly, because of the tools and how RIT prepared me.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Ruben. All right, we do have another good question here. So what advice do you have on gaining a well-rounded skill set? Learning operations, business strategy, and marketing were mentioned as key skills to enable business growth. What does that actually look like, and while still advancing through one's career?
I can give a couple of key things that come to mind, right? It's, as an MBA student, it's always nice if you're able to secure, your first job in companies that offer a rotation program, right?
Yeah.
I know they are still offered. A rotation program is fabulous. It takes you through various different departments. You get first-hand exposure. A lot of the good programs, they typically tend to be at least, a 2-year program. They're spending, 4 to 6 months in every department. So that's obviously the most, a straightforward way to gain that experience and skill set, and at some point then land in the area that is most, interesting to you. But that is a luxury not everybody has, right? So sometimes you just basically end up, getting a great job in one particular department. And then you have to organically learn those skills, right? So, I always, people on my team, I always encourage, go make friends with people in other departments, like take advantage of all the different networking opportunities your company provides you, right? Whether it's a happy hour, whether it is taking part in, some sort of a workshop, but like organically seek out participating in anything that involves bringing in people from other departments. You have to submit a purchase order, you're running into a problem with finance versus just sending a text message. Schedule some time with that person, 15 minutes, have a conversation. You've built a relationship. So be very organic and thoughtful and purposeful about it, because having that exposure can only help you as you progress in your career.
Thanks, Kara. That's great advice. Jeff or Ruben, anything else you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, you don't realize it, but why you're doing this in this graduate degree is you're looking for a leadership role, right? Maybe you haven't really thought about that, but you're looking at it saying, I want to advance my career, and how you advance your career, you're going to get in leadership role. And so, when you're in a leadership role, fundamentally, you have to always ask yourself, how do you motivate people, right? Motivated people can move mountains. So what do you need to do to motivate? I found that my background at RIT and the classes I took allows me to lead by example across any areas, whether it be marketing, whether it be sales, accounting, whatever. Now, I'm not an expert in those, but I can certainly jump in, lead by example. And by leading by example, you motivate people.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Those are great points. Again, I'm an accountant by trade, CPA, but I've led operations, I've led marketing, I've led human resources, IT, and the common denominator in all of those things is just having the ability to lead people. You don't have to be an expert in those particular areas to do it. You do have to have a basic understanding, and I think your education in this program, certainly helps to provide that. But you really need to be able to lead people, and you need to have an understanding of business in general. How concepts like in business units. What does that mean? How do you operate a profit center? Within a business, and all of those things are things that you'll learn in this program. And that will set you up for success in these roles going forward.
Awesome. Thank you all. Appreciate all those insights. All right, so I don't see any more questions here. So yeah, so we can certainly wrap up. Is there any last things that you all wanted to highlight for our attendees? Anything, lasting things you might want to leave with them as we close?
I would just say
put a tiger in your tank.
That's right. I love it. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
Sorry,
getting my
Jeff.
MBA was a game changer. Absolutely, for my career. And
You bet it was.
going to RIT was definitely the right decision for me.
No, I think it's a privilege to be an RIT grad. Also remember, I live here in the Bay Area. We have so many RIT graduates here. The year I graduated, there were so many people who came out west to basically build the whole chip industry. A lot of engineers coming from there, a lot of people coming with business degrees from there. I know companies like Apple and Google, like the things like the color department. Like RIT has such innovative programs. It's like the world is open to you with opportunity. So
yeah, that's great. We actually have a study away program now in LA. So it's just, that footprint in LA is growing. We actually have a provost out there now as well. So we very intentional about that growth. But awesome. Well, I want to thank all Jeff, Ruben, and Karuna. Thank you very much again for joining us. Really appreciate your time. Incredibly valuable insights. For those attending, we will send out the recording of this if you do want to go back and peruse again, and we'll get it out to other folks that weren't able to make it. But yeah, again, really appreciate your time. And if any folks on the call have questions going forward, please reach out, and I'm sure we can connect you with Jeff, Ruben, or Karuna if you do have further things that you want to address going forward. But thank you all again. Have a good day, and we'll hopefully see you in one of our programs in the future.
Thanks,
Thank you, Matt.
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Nice
it.
seeing you, Jeff. Nice seeing
Great
you.
day.
Karuna.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.